Alright, you might hear a cute little boy in the background because I'm in his room. He's letting me use his room to do a video. You want to say hi?
I don't like that.
You don't like that? Okay. Alright, so the topic of this video is regarding something that's been going around apparently on social media regarding a so-called rapture on September 23rd. First of all, rapture is not in the Bible, and so if you want to know what God has to say, you need to use the language that he's used. Rapture is not written in the Bible. The Bible was not written in Latin. Resurrection is used 52 times in the Bible. So if you use that language, then you're going to understand what God has said. Now, in the book of Matthew, Jesus said that we do not know the day or hour. Listen to what he said. We don't know the day or the hour. We could know the year. We could know roughly the time. And he tells us in Daniel 12 that that the wise are going to know, but the wicked will not. And in the book of Daniel, he gives us an exact number of days of things that have to happen before that resurrection takes place. So you may not know the day or hour, but you could know generally the time. And it turns out the wise are going to know generally the time. Because from the time that the witnesses are killed, there are 1,290 days until the abomination of desolation is set up. Blessed is the one who reaches 1,335 days. But I want to tell you something else about this, because I heard someone say this, and this is inaccurate. The book of Daniel does not tell us an exact number of days until Jesus comes. It says, blessed is the one who reaches 1,335 days. That doesn't mean that on the 1,335th or 36th day that he's coming. That's not what that's saying. In Luke 21, when Jesus is talking about the things that are going to happen, and he's talking about the abomination of desolation, and then he's talking about there's going to be signs in the sun, moon, and stars. On the earth, the nations will be in anguish and perplexity at the roaring and tossing of the sea. People will faint from terror, apprehensive of what is coming on the world, for the heavenly bodies will be shaken. At that time, they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. When these things begin to take place, stand up and lift your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. Jesus hasn't told us these things in vain so that we see them and we're like, no, we're not supposed to know the day or hour. He hasn't told us an exact number of days from the time that the witnesses are killed that the abomination of desolation is going to be set up. Blessed is the one who reaches 1,335 days. He hasn't told us these things so that we're stupid and we say, oh no, we don't know the day or hour, so we can't possibly know the general time. On the other hand, he also has said things to us like, we don't know the day or hour, so we're not supposed to be predicting dates. But I'm telling you that I have been raised as a witness, and I know when I'm going to complete this, and so we know the general time from the time that the witnesses die, when the abomination of desolation will be set up. Blessed is the one who reaches 1,335 days. We know the general time that Jesus is going to come back. We do not know the day or hour. And as he says in the book of Acts, in the first chapter of Acts, it's not for us to know. He said to the apostles, it is not for you to know the times the Father has set by his own authority. But see, what I see happening in counterfeit Judaism and counterfeit Christianity is that they're not even celebrating the correct holy days, because they prostituted themselves to the Gregorian calendar and the Harlot Catholic Church. They don't observe the correct Sabbath. Saturday is not in the Bible. Sunday is not in the Bible. God has us counting rest days and work days. And the very beginning of the month, the new moon, when it is the crescent, not the dark moon, from that time, you're resting, then you're working, then you're resting again. Then you're working, then you're resting again. He never, not once, said anything about a Sunday or a Saturday. What he said is, the first day is a rest day, followed by 6 work days, then a 7th day of rest, 6 work days, 7th day of rest. This is the way you're supposed to be counting down your Sabbaths. You don't count down your Sabbaths according to what the Romans established, which is Sunday to Saturday. You don't do that. And you don't count down his holy days that way either. And you don't change the name of his holy days to Easter. And you don't make up new holy days called Christmas. And so what people do, particularly people like Jonathan Cahn, who are constantly leading you to a so-called faith where you're always trying to figure out God, always trying to calculate him, the mystical God. You're trying to figure him out rather than have a relationship with him. You're not going to figure him out by saying, oh, he has to come on the Festival of Trumpets. And this is the reason why people are saying this about September 23rd, because they're claiming that this is the Festival of Trumpets, which it's not. This is not the Festival of Trumpets. They don't have the correct days. We've already been told in Hosea 2:6 and Lamentations 2:11 that they lost his calendar. So these aren't even correct holy days, and we don't know the day or hour. And that is a day. That is a day. So you can't say that it's going to occur on that day. What these people are doing is acting out their superficial, wicked, so-called faith. It's not going to be to their credit. They lead people astray. They set up stumbling blocks before other people who do not have enough understanding, and they lead people to follow them. For what? What is the purpose of knowing what the day is? You're supposed to be ready in and out of season, aren't you? The other thing that's going on is that people are basing these so-called prophecies, these false predictions, they're false prophets. They're basing this on an Israel that is not the Israel that God talks about in the Bible, on a counterfeit Israel, which is the image of the Antichrist. And so they're saying things like, well, these are the things that are going on in Israel. No, actually, they're not the things that are going on in Israel, real Israel, which are God's people. The word says that people are handed over to deception, to delusion, because they have not loved truth. And this is a delusion. This idea that this is the Israel that God has talked about in the Bible is an outright delusion. And they're basing everything on what is going on with that they're fulfilling. They believe these things, and so they actually are creating a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it's not a self-fulfilling prophecy that God is going to testify to. It's one that he's going to hand them over to in delusion. And the other thing that I find totally bizarre is that isn't there supposed to be some temple that is set up in the Middle East before Jesus comes, according to their narrative? That hasn't been set up. So everyone's always trying to hasten this thing, and no one cares about what God's doing. What about the other things that actually need to happen? First of all, not a temple in the Middle East, not a physical temple. God doesn't dwell in temples made by human hands, and the entire New Testament tells you that you are the temple. There's no temple that's going to be built in the Middle East that God is going to acknowledge as his temple. There are no sacrifices that are going to be set up in the Middle East that God is going to acknowledge as sacrifices. Do you think he's going to disrespect the sacrifice of his son? What about the things that God actually talks about needing to happen prior to him coming back? What about the time of great distress, the 45 days from the 1290th day to the 1335th day? What about the sun being darkened, the moon turning to blood, the stars falling from the skies? What about these things? What about the Antichrist reign? See, there's a twisted narrative and timeline that people have presented that is unbiblical. So that pre-tribulation rapture proponents who don't want to accept their cross and don't want to accept what God's people are actually going to experience, this is what they accept as being gospel because they're too lazy to read the word. They don't want to have to suffer anything. They prefer a narrative that they then expect God to fulfill. It's not going to be to their credit. God's very clear in his word. There's no reason anyone should believe any of that. Especially that some people in the Middle East claiming to be chosen who don't obey God's law, who commit all manner of atrocities, that this is the Israel that God is talking about. Give me a break. Based on dissent, is that God's heart? Did he not kill off those who were disobedient while wandering in the wilderness? He's not concerned about dissent. He's not yielding to some image called Israel. And what about the witnesses? What about the witnesses who come to warn? What about the witnesses who this entire timeline in Daniel is based off of? From the time the witnesses are killed, the daily sacrifice is abolished, and the temple is thrown down. They're the temple. They're the sacrifice. Their daily sacrifice, 1,260 days to be exact, From that time on, there will be 1,290 days before the abomination of desolation is set up. And that during that time, the Antichrist is going to reign. What about Revelation 12? What about Revelation 12, where it talks about those witnesses sharing their testimony, those people who did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death? What about everything being set in reference to that? And that when they complete that testifying of 1,260 days, that the Antichrist is going to rise from the abyss to overpower and kill them, and then he's going to go after you. What about any of that? No one's talking about that. No, they look for a bunch of signs that they actually create in their wickedness and the things that they support, and they fulfill their own prophecies, and then they expect God to do something about it. To be like, well, you were deceived. Boo-hoo. I guess I'll go ahead and give you credit. Don't count on it. Please discern these things with God. Don't be listening to anybody who tells you that they know the date of the resurrection. And if they use the word rapture, there's no truth in them. Because in the book of John, Jesus tells us that those who speak on their own authority do so for their own glory, and there's no truth in them. But those who speak on the authority of the one who sent them, the implication is, if you're not speaking on the authority of God, you haven't been sent by God. You make things up in order to gain your own followers. You have not been sent by God. These people making up these words and terms that you have to rely on them to then explain because you can't find it in the Bible. These people speak on their own authority for their own glory. There is no truth in them. But the one who speaks on the authority of the one who sent them is a person of truth. Please discern these things with him.